They're on their way. Rick, Commissioner Bowles.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, good afternoon. I'm calling this meeting to order. I note that some of the participants are participating via video conference. Today's public meeting is also being live streamed from the Port Authority website. We will now hold the public meeting, starting with the Committee on Finance, which will be chaired by Commissioner LaBarbera, that'll be followed by a meeting of the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management, which will be chaired by my Vice Chair, Jeff Linford. And we will conclude the public portion with a public board meeting. Let's start off with Commissioner LaBarbera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's meeting of the Committee on Finance is being held in public session in its entirety. At this point, I ask Secretary to advise those present of the composition of the Committee on Finance and any Commissioner recusals on the matter before the Committee at today's meeting.
Thank you. The committee is composed of Commissioner LaBarbera, the committee chair, Commissioner McCabe, the committee vice chair, and Commissioners Fine, Kelly, and Richardson. All committee members are present. Also present are Chairman O'Toole, Vice Chairman Linford, and Commissioner Bolwage, Eve, Fisher, and Rosado. Commissioners Richardson, Fine, and Rosado are remote today.
Thank you.
Oh, and there are no recusals required.
Thank you. I call on our Chief Financial Officer, Libby McCarthy, to present financial performances results for the first 9 months of 2024. Libby?
Thank you, Commissioner, and good afternoon. Today I'm happy to present our 9-month financial results. I'm going to be providing an overview of those results. I want to remind the board and the public that the condensed financial statements for the 9 months will be posted on the Port Authority's website after the conclusion of this meeting. Also, just in opening, just a reminder that this information is best understood when read in conjunction with the full financial statements, as is typical of quarterly financial information. And it is also, to the extent we have forward-looking information, there is the possibility that actual outcome may differ from the forward-looking information as a result of the timing of that. So moving forward, the 9-month financial results were quite strong. Net operating revenues totaled approximately $2.2 billion during the first 9 months of 2024, which was a $98 million or 5% increase over the same period in 2023, when looked at before the impact in both years of the actuarially determined non-cash fringe benefit adjustments related to our retiree pension and health care plans. When including this non-cash expense, net operating revenue for the first 9 months of the year totaled $2 billion, which is essentially flat when compared to the same period in the prior year. As compared to the 2024 budget for the first 9 months, net operating revenue was $29 million or 1% higher than planned. After factoring in other non-operating revenue items and the non-cash mark-to-market adjustment of our investment portfolio, net revenues available for debt service totaled nearly $2.8 billion for the period, which was slightly above last year's result. These results are driven by a number of different factors, which I'll discuss as we move through the presentation. This slide shows our activity at Aviation and Tunnels and Bridges. I'll just start with an overview of all 4 of the business units, but to orient you on this slide and the next page, the green line corresponds to the current year, current 9-month activity, and the yellow line corresponds to the 2023 results for the same period. Aviation on the left and TB&T on the right. The Port Authority's airports continued to experience record volumes in 2024. Total passenger volumes for the first 9 months of the year were 1.4% higher than our 2023 levels, as nearly 110 million passengers passed through the 3 major airports. As compared to the 2024 budget for the period, aviation activity was slightly lower than planned. Moving on to our bridges and tunnels, activity during the 9-month period was slightly under the 2023 level. And this was really attributed, we believe, to some shifts in the weather patterns. And I would point out that what we are seeing is year-over-year strong growth in our truck activity. It was up 2.2% compared to 2023, and trucks were up 5.4% compared to our budget. Again, while the overall traffic activity was right around plan and prior year, we are seeing strong growth in the truck activity. Moving on to our ports and the path system. Our ports continue to be amongst the busiest container ports in the nation. Volume in the first 9 months of this year finished 14% higher than the same period in 2023 and 9% higher than budget. We do estimate that about 2% of that growth, or the budget grew by, or the activity grew by approximately 2% as a result of the diversion of cargo activity from the Port of Baltimore during the second quarter of the year, which is indicated by the green dotted line on the chart. Lastly, the PATH system, like other mass transit commuter systems in the region, continues to have a slower recovery of ridership since the onset of COVID-19. While PATH ridership for the first 9 months was 13% higher than the same period in 2023, ridership remains about, over the 9 months, 68% of pre-COVID 2019 activity levels, as indicated by the light blue line on this chart. I will note, however, that PATH ridership in the month of September of this year was 74% of 2019 levels, which is a dramatic uptick for the month. PATH ridership, though, and so we're seeing in that after the summer vacations a very significant increase in the PATH ridership. For the first 9 months, however, of 2024, we are currently about 1% lower than budget in terms of PATH ridership. So now looking at our revenues, this slide shows the breakdown of our gross operating revenues by our various categories. Gross operating revenues for the 9-month period totaled $5.2 billion, which is an increase of $323 million or 7% year over year. As compared to the 2024 budget, gross operating revenues for the first 9 months were $131 million or nearly 3% higher than planned. The chart depicts the components, as I said, of the various pieces of our operating growth, and the strong year-over-year performance is primarily driven by our higher rental income and aviation cost recovery revenues. Rental revenues of $1.8 billion or $146 million or 9% higher year over year, and they are primarily driven by increased activities at our airports and our marine ports, as well as new rents associated with the various airport redevelopment projects at Newark and JFK Airport. Aviation fees of nearly $1.3 billion are 11% higher than the same period in 2023. These fees primarily consist of cost recovery revenues. The large year-over-year increase is primarily a result of a new airline cost recovery agreement that went into effect in January of this year. For the 9-month period, revenues are $131 million or 3% higher than planned. Moving on to operating expenses. When excluding that non-cash fringe benefit adjustment that I spoke about, the first 9 months of 2024 totaled approximately $3 billion, representing an increase of $225 million or 8% year over year. Most of this spending supports higher activity volumes across all of our facilities related to new or expanded facilities, heightened physical and cybersecurity measures in response to the current threat environment, and increased construction support activities. For the 9 months of this year, operating expenses are $102 million, or 4% higher than planned due to those similar factors. Now looking at our cash flow and liquidity. Cash from operations for the first 9 months of 24 was $2.4 billion, which reflects a $182 million or 8% increase as compared to the same period. And this is really driven by those increased revenues that we talked about that are improving our cash flows. Cash and investments as of September 30th totaled $6.2 billion, which is approximately $800 million higher than year end of 2023. Again, driven by the higher cash flow from operations, as well as contributions in aid of construction related to JFK Airport redevelopment projects. In addition to cash and investments, as of September 30th of this year, the Port Authority had approximately $358 million of capital to support capital capacity to support its capital construction program, consisting of capital funds and available bank revolver capacity. And when excluding the General Reserve Fund and Capital Fund, cash and investments on hand at September 30th represented 339 days of cash on hand. And finally, looking at our bonds and other obligations, as of September 30th, they totaled $28.2 billion. And this is the net effect of issuance of new money and refundings, new money to support our capital program and refundings. You can see that we were pretty much flat to where we ended 2023. We were most recently in the market in late September with a $1.1 billion offering that allowed us to raise more than $335 million of new money proceeds to support our capital program. We also refunded approximately $850 million of prior debt at lower interest rates, resulting in approximately $85 million of present value savings. That concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Libby. Do any commissioners have comments or questions regarding the report? Okay, hearing none, this concludes today's meeting on the Committee on Finance. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.